Hey, what's going on, guys? I've got a kind of an interesting video today. I'm currently demoing a Gin Falcon 2. This is a 22-meter wing. My buddy Colton highly recommended this wing. He said, you got to demo this, check it out, see what you think. So Superfly out of Utah sent this one to me to try out. Now, I've had this wing up in the air maybe 5 or 6 times over the last week. Different conditions, mornings, evenings. Today, it's actually 12:30 in the afternoon. The sun's been hidden by the clouds most of the day. There's really not much for thermals. And I thought today would be a good day not only to take the Gin Falcon 2 up for another flight, but to really compare it to my Dudek Driftair, which is a 20-meter. I've been flying that wing for 3 years. I feel very confident with it. It's got some amazing strengths and just one weakness, and the weakness is the launch, which at this point I pretty much can launch it every time, but it does take a little bit more running. You don't have as much brake pressure that you can apply to get the wing off the ground. The Falcon, on the other hand, what I've noticed is that thing launches very similar to an Ozone, and it's got some of the characteristics of in-flight as the Dudek. So could this be the best ultimate wing? Well, let's take them up and compare the two. Okay, we're gonna take the EFI up. We're just booting the system up right now. Put about 5 liters of fuel in. As you can see, conditions are pretty mild at midday. If I'm going to do a comparison, I do want the conditions to be a little less than ideal. I feel like that's kind of what we want out of a wing. We want to know how it's going to handle the less than perfect scenarios. So we're going to start out with the Gin Falcon 2. Earlier in the week I took this up, and there was no wind. It was a perfect evening, and I just about had the feeling that this could be like the best wing ever made. Everything about it felt really good. Now we got little to no wind. This is a good opportunity to show how nice and easy this thing launches. I do go trims neutral. I tried trims in, and it does take a little bit more work to pull it up. Trims neutral pops up nice and easy, and even better, the brake, it's got so much flare, so it just gets off the ground nice and easy. Let me show you how easy this is. Just like that, she's up in the air. As I said, conditions are not ideal right now. They are a little bit choppy. You can see that I'm having the active pilot to keep the craft nice and straight. The wing has just a little bit of jitter to it. Oh, there we just hit a thermal. I felt that lift. So it's not the most ideal weather for flying, but sometimes we can be flying in good conditions and we get caught in conditions like this. And I want to know how the wing is going to handle. So yeah, it's not comfortable, and this isn't the time I would normally want to fly just for that reason. But the first thing I gotta say is this wing feels solid. It feels really good. Now, one thing you notice is my hands. Watch this compared to the Dudek. My hands are way up here. That's one of the things I'm not super big on. Maybe they tied this up for the demo wing, I'm not sure. But it just seems like my hands are way higher than on the Dudek, and I prefer to be a little bit lower. So those little bursts of the sun coming out are just enough to make these little warm pockets of air, and I'm feeling it. Now, is this unsafe? I don't feel like it's unsafe. I feel like it's uncomfortable. If it was unsafe, I'd be turning around landing immediately. So as you can see, tip steer is already tied in. I do like that. I feel very stable right now. We're going with the wind, so we've got a tailwind. This wing is really fast. Trims neutral, I feel like it's probably low 30 mile an hour wing. Trims out, I had it up to 40. So it's a very fast wing. I'm going to pull our trims in, as that's better with conditions like this.
This wing is pretty dynamic. Now, as a 22 meter, I'm at the high end of the weight range, so I think that's where I get a lot more agility out of the wing. Whoop, just hit some more lift there. Yeah, this is not fun flying conditions. But I want to compare this to the Dudek. How does this feel in uncomfortable conditions versus the Dudek? And I have to say, this feels pretty good. I feel like I am bouncing around a little bit, but overall I feel like I can handle it fine. The wing's not doing anything too wonky. It's just getting blown around. So let's land this guy and get the Dudek up in there and see how it feels in similar conditions. Now once again, we've got the benefit of grabbing our toggles at the top, which I really like that on the Dudek as well. This gives you a little bit more flare authority. I'm going to land this thing trims in and see how she does. But this wing has just such nice flare, it just feels really good to land it. This morning I landed it with trims all the way out, and that was super nice. But let's do a little swoop here. We'll get ourselves up by the house. Whoa, these winds, I tell you. All right. See that? That's a no-wind landing. And it just comes down nice and easy. No wind, trims all the wind. All right. Well, that's kind of cool. We just unhook from one wing and we head over the Dudek. Now this has by far been my favorite wing. The Dudek Driftair feels good. Once it's in the air, it feels rock solid. It's super nimble. The controls are easy. There's hardly any pressure you got to put on the brakes. It really does exactly what you want it to do. But it does require a little finesse when launching. Just a little bit. It just takes a little getting used to. Now I still have to say these are my favorite toggles. The Gin Falcon 2 has a nice toggle, but I really like the Driftair or the Dudek toggles. Okay, so we got a little bit of a strange wind right now. Let's just give it a second. It's so light. I think we can do this. We're just going to have to muscle her up. Alright, let's see how this Dudek launches. Well, I just busted the bolt for the 360 camera. I think. Let's just be loose. So anyway, the Dudek requires a lot more running because you can't yank down on the brakes. If you yank down on the brakes on this thing when you're trying to launch it, it immediately stalls back. And it's just the way it is. And you get used to it, you commit to having to run. Once the wing is solid, you can add a little bit of brake and she'll lift off, but it does not launch as easy as my ozone wings or even this Gin Falcon. So that's definitely one of the downsides of it. I love the hand position. Look how much lower my hands are. This is a much more comfortable flying position. And then when I land, I can reach up top to get a little bit more flare authority. But this is really smooth. The other thing is, this wing feels just a little more solid in the air, even in these conditions. We're flying at the same altitude, we're getting that same kind of uncomfortable air, couple little thermals here and there, but this wing literally is pretty rock solid. There's not a lot of active piloting I really even need to do. So my hands are up right now. The wing, you can feel, yeah, it bounces around just a little bit, but I don't feel like I'm having to control the wing. I'm necessarily just controlling my direction. And sadly, I sold my Spider 3. That's one of my original wings. It's such a great wing, and I was debating back and forth. But I feel like at this point with my flying, An intermediate wing is my beginner wing now. So yeah, I do feel a little bit more stable in these conditions on the Dudek. It's just as simple as that. Yeah, hitting the same air on the Dudek, you know, I do have to pull a little bit here. I'm adjusting, but I feel more secure on this wing. Just slightly more. The Gin is very close, but I don't know. There's something about this Driftair, and I don't know if it's all Dudek wings, but they feel rock solid in the air. Now, both of these are intermediate wings. Once again, this is a 20 meter. The Gin Falcon 2 is a 22 meter. And I'm not considering the Gin Falcon 2 as a replacement to the Dudek. To be honest, the Gin Falcon 2 would be a replacement to my Sirocco 3. So they're both kind of in that same class. I just feel like the Gin Falcon 2 is just one step ahead. Yeah, this is actually pretty comfortable. I wouldn't mind flying more in these conditions with the Dudek Driftair. What's going on here? Alright, well, I don't think we're going to be able to fix that. I might have to try one of those landings I've seen a couple guys do. Ben has done this, and I think Tucker might have done this. Anthony's done this, where they hold the 360 camera in their hand when they're landing. I haven't done that yet, but let's give it a try, because I can't seem to get it on the mount. Now, between the two wings, I will say, even though the Driftair lands really good, it really does, the Gin Falcon 2 lands better. It has more flair. In some ways, the Dudek gives you this false sense of security that it's like uncollapsible. I've never had any type of collapse on this wing, and honestly, I haven't done any wing, but I've flown this in much more extreme situations. I've hit much more challenging rotor with this wing. But yeah, these two finger pulls, it's super light, very nimble. Oh yeah, there's that sun popping out now, and right away I can already feel thermals. It's just crazy how quick that happens. I don't know how these guys have done this. I sure the heck don't want to hit my prop. Hold it out front like that, I guess. Alright guys, here goes nothing. Oh, just as I see that, now there's wind blowing on the windsock. So let's take a look at that first. Alright, so the wind actually switched earlier this morning. It was going the exact opposite way. Trying to find a way to hold this out front. Should actually be a pretty smooth landing. So the Gin, we didn't have any wind, and now we've got a little bit for the Dudek. Kind of unpredictable wind. So there you go, guys. Comparison between the Gin Falcon 2 and the Dudek Driftair. We've got some good conditions coming up this weekend. I'm going to take these out to the airport, do like a legit review on this Falcon 2, because I think it's one of those wings that a lot of people don't know about, or there's just not enough reviews out there. So I want to make sure you guys have all the info you need. Will this be my next wing? Well, we'll find out. I've had this Gin Falcon 2 for about a week now. This is probably my 5th or 6th flight so far. I'm pretty happy with it. I've had a couple of no-wind launches. It comes up really nice and easy. Still no wind. Alright, let's do it, guys. Let's get in the air. So one thing I noticed about this wing right off the bat is it is fast. As soon as you get in the air, I mean, I've trimmed at neutral and I'm doing 37 miles an hour. So we're going to gain some altitude, and I'm going to go full trims out. Let's see how fast this baby goes. You know, before I get too committed to this cross-country flight. I definitely want to play around in some fields here. I've had some decent conditions this wing, but I haven't really tried too much for wingovers yet. Oh yeah, it's a spicy one. I'm actually going to go trims in just to slow it down a little bit for these maneuvers. But yeah, with the 2D tied in, it's very intuitive. It feels really nice. I'm not a big fan of these toggles. The squared out is nice on this side, but this side I've only got 2 fingers in it. I don't know, it just doesn't really work well for the 2D steering. But one of the things I really like about this wing that the Dudek does not do, so yeah, we're doing 31 miles an hour right now, trimmed all the way in. Because of the speed and because of the amount of flare this thing has, it pops super nice. So I need to get over this hill, bring it just a little bit of brake, and she just pops right up. It's nice to know you can pop it super easy like that. So just like the Dudek, this thing just requires such a little bit of pull to get it to do what you want it to do. It just feels rock solid in the whole process. It is a beautiful fall day. Look at these colors. They're a little bit muted as we're coming into November, but it is still beautiful out. Now the Gin Falcon 2 is likely going to be my next wing. I think I'm going to replace my Sirocco 3 with this wing. And I really like the Sirocco 3. It's been a great wing overall. Ozone makes good wings. It's just time to kind of dive into something else. And between this wing and the Dudek, I feel like it'll be a perfect balance of having the right wing no matter what the conditions are. Okay guys, we got speed bar hooked up and I'm at about 1,400 feet. So we're gonna get this to try. Right now we're doing about 35 miles an hour. Now I can already tell I'm not gonna get full extension here. So with speed bar at about neutral trim, right about 42 miles an hour. That's not bad. Now let's go ahead and trim all the way out. One thing about this wing is it does weight shift really nice. I gotta try to get my bearings straight on where I'm going here, but alright, so let's trim all the way out here. Okay, so trimmed all the way out, we're closer to 40 miles an hour. Now trimmed all the way out with speed bar, we're about 45, 46. Now I've got another inch to go here, which I bet I can get a little bit more. Trimmed all the way out, we could probably get closer to 50. And that's with maybe a slight tailwind. So this is a pretty fast wing. Definitely fast enough.